I had a dream, you guys. I keep getting dreams, but I'm going to explain to you what happened in this dream so you can understand why. In the previous part, please go check it out. I was rapping on so much about hauntings. Romans 1, I spoke about that in the previous part, where it is written that the wicked are always inventing new ways to sin. It is written that because of just their craziness, they invent brand spanking new ways to sin. And I spoke about how it is that they keep going back to the drawing board immediately after their last drawing board is crashed and burned by the Spirit of the living God. They have invented a new way to sin, and I got a dream about that. That's why I compared myself to a Gaza Strip that never ever got given over to the Palestinians, because that's what Christians are. We never compromise. If at all you're truly of God, don't come tell me about the lukewarm conglomerate. Don't come tell me about the Sardians. And also do not come and tell me about a Christian that compromised because they were scared and did not trust God. Oh, them of little faith. I am talking about those who are holding fast to the word of God and what they believe, holding fast to what the Lord promised he would give them, and them trusting it. Those who understand that it is impossible for God to lie. It is impossible for God to be defeated. It is impossible for God to lose. It is impossible, therefore, for whoever is holding on to him with a fever to come out wanting on the other side. Impossible. So whatever optical illusions are about them, trying to convince them to do a different thing, all they are laughable to a person who is, by the word of God, putting to death everything around them that is a lie. The Bible says in, is it 1st or 2nd Corinthians 4, I stand corrected, that we must demolish arguments and every lofty pretension or imagination that exalts itself above the Most High, and hold into captivity every thought to the obedience of Jesus Christ. This is where that particular passage comes in handy, when the occult is literally working like a dog to manipulate your mind, using all different kinds of witchcraft to try and make you feel so scared, so nervous, so afraid, so shirky, like you don't know what to do with yourself, that you will eventually settle. There are Christians, true believers, who are gonna get to heaven mourning, do you understand, crying, because they allowed themselves to shake and fear and tremble. They allowed their knees to be wobble. Given that time tends to be very scary. When it progresses and there is no breakthrough. When time progresses and there is no breakthrough, that is the sweet spot for a lot of Christians to tremble and fall. For their testimonies to lack credibility, therefore. And even though they're still holding on to God in salvation, they have definitely lost their conquering streak. We are more than conquerors. Christianity is a very intentional battle. You can either pick up your armor and fight, or you can cower. You can hide. When you fight, however, upon winning, you pierce through on the other side and you conquer. You have always got to look at the wicked around you the way that Job looked at his wife. Basically just conclude that they're crazy, and don't recognize that you don't only praise God in good times, but also in bad. You are ever praising God. And even though your spirit is embittered, even though you are broken and you don't understand why everything is happening, and like Job, you wish you were dead, never born. Bottom line is, giving up is never an option. You gotta stay pious so much that you're even fasting for the friends who are teasing you during your season of being unprepared to compromise. Ongali, don't you ever down tools. Perverted men, by far the most destructive force in my life. I can't stand them. Bayanginyanyisa, like in the worst way. And they are so determined for me due to the observation of my life. Babatlahui gets lucky, and I will use the word lucky because it's a magic term. It's an occult term. It's a fallen term. A miracle and blessedness, those are godly terms. But when you end up with something that you don't frigging deserve, when you end up with something that you have not earned, when you have not worked for something, that's when you're lucky. In other words, your magic spells ultimately paid for you. They ultimately, what's the word that I am looking for? Paid off. Yes. You see, evil men are aware that they can't korobela me. What is korobela? It is a love spell. They have tried multiple times. This guy from America, he's still on that game. But there's others that I keep seeing in my dream. Since korobela doesn't work, now all they're leaning on is my situational circumstance. They hope to crush my spirit. The Bible says hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. My longings have yet to be fulfilled, and so my heart has been sick. But the Lord has strengthened this heart of mine. I told you, I'm like Ezekiel. He's made my head like brass. I have stopped being too broken by the quietness of my YouTube channel, my shadow banned state, the obvious anomaly, how aberrant it all is. I am clearly listenable. I have stopped being all sad about it. So it appears as if though other things gotta be used now. 1 minute. Ish. Other things gotta be used now. Thank God I've got a prophetic gifting. And again, the Lord gave me this gifting because he set me apart for this particular work. He wanted me to do this job. And so for me to be able to do this job, I had to be, what is the word that I am looking for? I had to be prophetically gifted. I had to basically get dreams showing me how crazy lazy get in the occult. Just how desperate they can get. So when they're dealing with a person that has got a spiritual gifting, sometimes because of these people being able to catch wind of their spiritual gift, what is this? They then send others so as to look innocent themselves. Like I told you, the wicked are always innovating new ways to sin. Because I find people out when they have done spells against me, but there is an intention to infiltrate some small little rando that doesn't make sense for me. There is now a new plan to bring in a small little rando that, however, is not involved in a darkness, at least not recently, but who has been helped along by others who do darkness. So Korobela, if at all it doesn't work, we're going to use this thing. The situational affliction. In other words, the usage of my environment, my ecosystem, the life that I'm living, the sadness of it. They hope to crush my spirit with it. They hope to get me to a point where I'm just tired of this already. I'm so exhausted that insofar as I can be promised safety, I must just now run with it. Like people who are like, okay, look, I get it. Like, leave me alone. You see, 1 minute. The Bible says we reap what we sow, that we must not be deceived, for God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, so too shall he reap. If they sow to the flesh, they will reap destruction. If they sow the spirit, they will reap eternal life. So you cannot expect to reap a godly wife after sowing witchcraft for 10 years. Dream on. This activity of these men is like self-sabotage. They ultimately get to a point where they destroy themselves. From what the Lord is showing me, and what he said to me in the kitchen earlier, was that the women in their lives became the judgment. 1 minute. Remember the analogy that I made, the descriptions that I was using in my first part about how it is that the Palestinians, they were given Gaza, right? Israel ultimately was like, Yazin, it's fine. Let's take all the Israelites out from Gaza. And 1 minute. They were like, let's take the Israelites out of Gaza and let them basically thrive the Gaza Strip. You've got everything you need. Make it work. Because they were sick and tired of fighting and they wanted peace. They were never supposed to give that up. And I spoke about how it is that when you give up a portion of yourself, when you compromise something that you know belongs to you, it is your inheritance, it is your heritage. They had the Torah, they knew that it belonged to them. When you give it up, that it ultimately comes back to eat you alive. It haunts at you. These random that are currently ransacking South Africa and maybe the world at large, this animal from America is, like I said, not South African, so he's American, and he is a man that squandered his inheritance and then just wanted a godly girl. He then ended up wanting to marry a godly woman. That is what in the world under heaven happens when you know what your inheritance is. You know what you deserve. You know what you were raised. You know how your mama taught you. You know how your mama trained you. You know what you wanted as a young man. You knew that you wanted hauna munna that's trying to marry a bad woman. Ain't no man out here in these streets trying to marry a woman that is going to make out of him a byword. So a lot of them, largely when they grow up, they've got what do you call this thing? They've got aspirations to marry the best woman around, to marry Miss South Africa. They've got these lofty ambitions to marry really great girls. But you see, God gives men wisdom. He implores them, inspires them unto wisdom when they're still young men, doesn't he? Telling them exactly what they need to do. How many of you men, when you were 18 in high school, 17, 16, absolutely were head over heels in love with the village bicycle? How many of you were besotted out of your mind with the girl that had slept with all of the girls in your crew of guys? How many of y'all had genuine love and true deep affection for the girl that had a bad reputation in the school. But my, how you wanted to play around with her. You also wanted to take turns with her, didn't you? If she was the village bicycle, you wanted to take turns with her. This is where the wisdom of your mom comes in, the wisdom of your dad, the wisdom of your own conscience. That wisdom tells you, my son, don't mess with that chick. Don't, because otlo limala. She's the kind of woman that you come out with ka STD. She's the kind of woman that's going to disrepute you. You want to flex a woman as a trophy that everybody is going to embrace and love. But oh, how sorrowful is the man that ends up married to the high school whore. But you were warned, weren't you? And yet you draw to yourselves high school whores that you, however, did not know once you got out of matric, because you met her in corporate. And you don't know her reputation back when she was in high school. You don't know what her boys, what her peers, when she was in the come up in her village, in her street, in her town, in her city, what they thought about her. And if this woman has not been transformed by the might of Jesus, she will not be any different from the harlot she was in high school. But the Lord enables you to know this woman from afar. He gives you warnings in advance. He tells you, my son, stay away from the immoral woman. There tends to be a lot that you are given. Alarm bells all over the show. That evidence to you that Lomundlona, I might not have known her when she was growing up, but just based on her current activity, she don't make sense. I will give you a biblical example and then some examples from my own life. And let me give you first a biblical example. Samson and Delilah. Samson knew that Delilah was a prostitute because he met her in an environment where prostitutes hang out. But he decided to go and fall in love with a wayward woman. And my oh my, how the guy ended up with his eyes plucked out. How the guy ended up betrayed. The Lord told me these women become their judgment. Samson was supposed to be a big fat mighty man of God doing big fat mighty things, but he lost his strength because of capitulating to the wayward woman. That is a biblical example. Yeah, well, let's talk then about Ahab with Jezebel. Ahab knew who he was supposed to worship as God since he was a Jewish king, but he decided to take a foreign bride that absolutely loved herself some Baal. On the wedding day, he wasn't blind as to what he was getting into, but he was just following his passions. And later on, she became the bane of his existence. And what did, Jezebel lead Ahab to? Hell. Ahab was guilty about Naboth's vineyard because he still had somewhat of a conscience, but that woman yanked him out of sobriety. So what I'm trying to explain to you guys is that even before you marry these women, senyazi. So don't come and bother with your lethargic disposition. A godly girl. Now that you want to listen to counsel and you're a middle-aged man, are you serious? You were given counsel as an 18-year-old boy. At the age of 16, you were told don't sleep with the girl that slept with your best friend. At the age of 21, you knew that that girl that's busy gyrating all over everybody's manhood in the club was not for you. But you wanted your own turn. You wanted to Kentucky. You wanted to have fun. But you see, there's something called curses that come through sexual activity that erode away, make kind of fuzzy a man's discernment. When you sleep with enough hoes, when you sleep with enough whores, do you understand? Ultimately, your eyes become blinded, fuzzy, to recognize a virtuous woman in your face. So you can't go around sleeping with all of the town and then expect to get a genuinely great girl. These men tend to be thrown in a trap where they end up marrying one of the harlots among the many that they were dunking themselves like a donut in some chocolate in their dalliances while they were sowing their royal oats. You ultimately end up marrying one of the prostitutes. You end up marrying one of the whores. You end up marrying one of the village bicycles. It's inevitable. You cannot be a wicked man and expect that God is just going to in your lap a good girl. Because a lot of these men that marry good women, yes, like at the bane of their existence. When I was during the season of my persecution, my family decided to throw me into a psychiatric hospital. I was discharged on the same day because the doctors found nothing wrong with me. Not the same day, the next day. After I saw the doctors, I slept there one night. They had lied. I told you guys that story. It's another story for another day, right? But on the one day that I was there, I met this woman that had checked herself in because she was basically losing her mind due to an evil, psychopathic, violently immoral, incredibly disturbing husband. This guy, never mind, would not only continue to cheat, but he would gaslight the living daylights out of her. Yes, he was spiritually manipulative and psychologically manipulative. Drop her off at the psychiatric hospital. when she would lose her mind to a point of basically like rocking in her chair. He made her sick. He made her sick. But she was such a sweetheart. She was such a darling. That's what happens when a really good girl, like some rodent that's rabid. That's what happens. The woman ends up constantly checking into a psychiatric hospital, having to take medication because of the amount of distress she is endured under thanks to a wicked man. But you see, as a woman, if you're that good a girl and you marry the dude that keeps cheating on you, you marry the dude that multiple times when you were fornicating, cohabiting, living together as an unmarried couple, there were nights when he wouldn't come home and you accepted his proposal. Yeah, you should not be fornicating in the first place. But a lot of the couples in this world first live together before they marry. And women so love the ring that even though a guy as in a rodent, like I could say a gorilla or orangutan, just because you keep a ring and we invested a lot of money in that ring, you then agree to walk down the aisle to a guy that was already swinging like Sia on a chandelier. Of course, you're asking to be checked into a psychiatric hospital, aren't you? You're asking to be checked into a psychiatric hospital. When I was dating my ex, there was this one friend of his that was such a loose cannon. He had a colored girlfriend, and this chick, just like it. Yo, but I don't know how she did it. Just like it. Yo, this guy, he asked me out. One time when I was partying and my ex was not there, I was not with my boyfriend, he thoroughly slipped in a Shellington. I was like, I'm dating your friend. And I was at that stage dating my ex maybe like a year. So I mean, it was kind of established. And I was at some club with some friends of mine. Bump into this guy, greet him because I know him. And then he starts dancing around with me and my girls. And then he's like, so, what are you doing? Give me your number. What? Dude, well, you know I'm dating your boy. Yeah, that was just the one story. He used to work in the same building as, in the same company as my boyfriend. And the stories my boyfriend would tell me, this guy used to have sex with colleagues in the car during lunch. And this woman knew, colored girlfriend of his, she knew that her man was a loose cannon. But she rode him out. And about 2 years into my relationship with my ex, which could have been like maybe 4 years into their relationship, he had been with this chick for 4 years. So 2 years longer than me and my ex. She decided to go and freaking fall pregnant. I was like, let's say her name was Caroline. I was like, yes, in Caroline, you had it coming, girl. You had it coming, sister girl. You had it coming. You had it coming. Like proper. How in the world you gonna give this guy a baby after he has done it? I was so like, throughout the stories that my boyfriend would tell me about this guy, I was like, this chick is gonna end up HIV positive. This guy was all over the show. He not only impregnated the colored chick, but he went on right ahead to impregnate some other woman at the same time. Kabang, you are a medi for 4 years, you fall pregnant by your boyfriend, and 2-3 months later, some other girl is pregnant. Whoa. I don't know what's going on with that chick today, but I used to hate that guy. I couldn't stand him. Every time I would see him, I would think about that chick and my heart would just, I hated him. I hated him because he was such an animal. And my boyfriend kept on telling me stories about his dalliances, his animalistic endeavors, and it just made me hate him even more. So if that colored girl ended up married to that random buffoon, now today she's probably a psychiatric patient too. Or maybe a divorcee. I could not understand why she kept on writing him out. She was still young and beautiful, and like every one of us had a shot at getting out before it's too late. And then she, however, sadly, unfortunately, went and fell pregnant. How she was even able to sleep with him without protection, I don't even know. Because she knew his dalliances. She knew his stunts. She knew everything he was doing. But that's just the thing about women. Sometimes they are content with being the maid. Insofar as we rechte bakrend, that the guy's cheating, they just are happy that the guy has made them the main thing. I guess that's where recreational dating becomes a problem then, isn't it? When you don't have Christ, yeah, of course, you're gonna think it's a whole honor, a plaque on your wall, to have a guy regard you as the main chick when he's got all these other sides. And when he cheats on you, it's like, oh, but babe, it didn't mean anything to me. Just like it doesn't. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff, Basadi, that'll put you in a psychiatric hospital. So women they tend to see, when they're good girls, when they're about to marry evil men And so when you are in a stray suit in a psychiatric hospital because you've lost your mind due to a man, you had it coming, there tends to be warning signs in the run-up to. And then secondly, the men themselves, when they are with bad girls, everything is also always around. The Lord is gracious even to unbelievers. He is gracious. Men know when they're marrying a bad girl. They are not naive. Yes, our intuition is a little bit sharper, but they nonetheless tend to have enough to run with. But sometimes these bad girls are electric, they're choking, and if at all, they're like Jezebel, Baazi, Satani, they know witchcraft. They are sorceresses, and they call themselves prophetesses. If they're Delilah, they're so sexy that the guy just can't resist. You're proper marrying a sexy woman, are you serious? That's what you're marrying, sexy? Dude, like, people age, and that flies out the window. You need more. What in the world? Like, you need more than just sexy. Delilah was sexy, and that was all that Samson ran with. He ran with the fact that she was hot. She's a coal, a burning coal. But the Proverbs make it clear that you can't put coals on your lap and expect not to burn, dog, like what? Yes, of course you're gonna burn. So the whole thing of marrying the sexiest girl around, the whole thing of marrying, like, just the beauty, the gorgeosity, marrying the personality. You're marrying a woman that's always up and down a stripper pole. Yeah, Kaza, that thing. You know you're marrying a bad girl. And so when you make like Wiz Khalifa and all of a sudden you want to divorce Amber Rose, Ungazo Kenya, the good girl. Later on, these women become the snare. And the Bible makes it clear. So even before you come to the world, the voice of God, his invisible qualities are all over creation, and so therefore men are without excuse. Your conscience speaks volumes. So God is always, it's written in God's word that the law of the Lord is written on our hearts. So even before you come to God as men, there is always a whisper, my son, stay away from the immoral woman. But no, you're having fun. Hey? Kumnandi. Who does not want to be with a sexy woman? Yeah, well, I mean, look at Megan Good's ex-husband. That bugger woke up in a marriage with a sexy woman and one day filed for divorce, wanting now all of a sudden to heed the Proverbs. When before he got married to her, everybody was highlighting to him. But she's naked, she's still doing sex scenes in Hollywood. She's this, she's that. And this pastor decided to go ayochata Megan Good even though she was still doing the exact same things she did before, just this time around with a profession of Christianity on her tongue. And while I am rooting for Megan Good to repent and give her life truly to Jesus Christ because she's clearly conflicted, had no business being a preacher's wife. But he declared divorce on her. He sent her a letter of divorcement. And I am pretty certain that that guy now wants a godly wife. If you're going to be a preacher, you have got to be a husband of but one wife and a man above reproach. So the fact that you have sent away Megan Good means you should basically also step down from the pulpit. But has he done that? No, he hasn't. So essentially these men have everything they need to make better decisions, and yet they make the wrong ones because, like I said, who does not want a sexy wife? Who does not want to marry Megan Good for her physical appearance? But if at all you get to see Megan Good's heart, you should be wise enough to avoid marrying her because she's still very much in the world. She is still very much adoring of the world. And she is also telling people not to judge her when they highlight things they ought to highlight, that a Christian woman should not be walking like that. Stop afflicting godly girls, because at this point, we are the equivalent of the Gaza Strip, something that men feel entitled to, and they imagine that like Israel, we're going to give it away because they are so persistent. Because unlike the Hebrews, we don't give up the Gaza Strip. We hold on to it. Why? Because we have embraced the Messiah, Verstangela. So the war that you make at our shores, we fight because we know that the moment we give you the Gaza Strip, in the marriage, you're going to take the Jerusalem in our heart. In the marriage, you're going to take the rest of Israel. You are going to coup the woman. You are going to overwhelm her Christianity. You are going to make her testimony lack credibility. You are going to miserate her, and you might even prosper to put her in a psychiatric hospital. I have seen a woman getting put in a psychiatric hospital by her husband, the guy of which dropped her off. The audacity. He dropped her off after he put her in that place. Where was the conscience? Where was the guilt? When your wife is so afflicted by you that she loses her mind, why don't you get your act together then? Have you no compassion? That's just the thing. My son is still greedy. And as women, we know when we're about to marry Gundwane. And men also know when they're about to marry Chucky's bride. So when you walk down the aisle, you do you. I will give you a living example. My cousin, I had a dream about her last night. She's busy with witchcraft with me, and her husband introduced her into the occult. However, she ended up a more prolific devil worshipper. This woman, this guy, My son, her husband, when we all were on the come up, when they first met, he was so sweet. He was such a good guy. Lost in the world, but by this world's standards, he was one of those better dudes. He wasn't all over the show. He was the kind of guy that, as a woman, when you meet him young, like when you're only like 20, and this guy is like 23, you feel blessed that he's not as crazy as all other 23-year-olds. He was so kept in a bunch. Onale responsible. Yeah, and then he met my cousin. My son. God gave him. He was still lost. He still is to this day. But he was lost, however, like I said, the invisible qualities of God are all over creation. The conscience speaks volumes. The Lord whispered into his ear. Bam Jalil, not that one. That guy, when he met my cousin, she was like, what, 20, 21? He was like 23, 24. A sweet little guy. My cousin, I told you her history. Unali busy all over the show. She was all over the show in high school. So essentially, if this guy had gone to her high school, he wouldn't want her. He wouldn't have wanted her. But he met her outside of that place. He did not know her history. But you know, these bad girls have a way of, you know, coming out. Like a dude in the closet. They have a way of coming out. Keeper. Their loose canonic state. I told you the story yesterday, or is it day before yesterday, where it is that once upon a time my cousin, her dad came to pick me up when we were in high school, like 15, 16, Monday night, while I was watching Ellie McBeal, to go and fetch my cousin from wherever she was at because she never went home. And the dad made me give him, like, basically show him where her boyfriend stayed. It was Parade View. And we drove all the way to the east of Johannesburg, Busihu, on a school night. And I had to, like, I had homework, I had to study, I had to sleep. But I was busy, got 10 Busihu, Kia, Parade View. Yeah, that's what's good. And when we got there, the boyfriend was like, I don't know where she is. I also have not been able to get a hold of her all weekend. So the boyfriend did not know where she was at. And she had disappeared all weekend and not gone to school on Monday. Una Bankil. Where in the world is a teenage girl at that time? Who is she with? Where is she sleeping? Because there is no way under heaven that she's sleeping at a friend's house. There's some other guy that she's with that has a place to stay, enough to harbor my cousin. And it was not her boyfriend. He did not know where she was at. He was just as puzzled as us. Their relationship ended because of me and her dad going to go look for her on Monday night. Yeah, I was still in my school uniform. And I was like, is my cousin here? Because her dad wants her. And this dude was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I also haven't seen her. So she was like that in high school. Therefore, if this guy had met her in high school, he would have known what she was. But, you know, we can cut him slack and say you met her after her wild days. The girl recovered. But like I said, like a dude in the closet, she came out on this guy. They dated for like a year and it became more serious and he loved her. He loved her, he took care of her, he did everything for her. Yeah, everything. He was faithful, he was a sweet guy. He was a good guy. He thought he'd found love. And my cousin, like, Delilah, mega muslegabi. Absolutely gorgeous. This guy fell head over heels in love with my cousin. He met my cousin through, again, birds of a feather flock together, guys. This guy used to attend one of the higher learning institutions in Johannesburg. And my cousin's friend, who was 2 years older than her, that was a village bicycle, like no man's business. Unakena, this higher learning institution. She and this guy attended the same campus, Go Varsity College. And so, because my cousin was friends with this girl, that was a village bicycle. She was all over. She was like a harlot of note. My cousin was always hanging out with this harlot of note. And this harlot, everybody knew her as exactly that. On campus, everywhere she went, everybody knew her reputation. Everywhere she went, everybody knew her reputation. So when you get introduced to a woman by the girl that all of the college has slept with, that is a warning sign out of like hell, or maybe even heaven. It's sirens ringing. Wee 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 wee. Would you go and make an honest woman out of a woman that you are introduced to by a prostitute? If you as a man get introduced to another woman by a prostitute and they are best friends, my goodness, this other woman might not be working in the brothel, but if you are best friends with a prostitute, it's highly likely that you also are kind of loose. So that was the first warning sign. Then, okay, that was not enough. So he introduced my cousin. This chick introduced my cousin to her friend from varsity, to this guy that she knew from varsity, that they used to hang out with. This guy fell for my cousin, was like, I like her, I'll date her, I'll take her. Very sweet guy. They started dating, and a year into the relationship, they go to a party, and my cousin meets his friend. She meets his friend, do you understand? And it's like, okay, fine, hey, what's up, what's good, whatever, moving on. 2-3 months down the line, my cousin was having an affair with his friend. So she introduces her to his boy, and then she has a relationship with his boy. She falls in love with his boy. His boy falls in love with her. And the two of them, like Bonnie and Clyde, decide to basically just stab this guy in the back and make it official. And so therefore she had to dump this guy. So yeah, they ran away together. My cousin and this guy's friend. They dated for like a year or two. The relationship fell apart. And when it fell apart, my cousin was wondering, what is my ex-boyfriend doing? And when she found out that her ex-boyfriend was dating another woman. Oh, another thing about this other friend of his. He was abusive to my cousin, and he was not a good guy. He was all over the show. And when you are a woman and you've been treated like a queen by a good guy, you will miss him when the bad guy is pulling a bad guy stunt. And so when my cousin found out that this guy found another girlfriend, and in a cheka, not far from where my cousin was staying, she then was like, busy wa mo betches, busy wa mo lata, busy, and that's also another thing. This guy, not betches, my cousin, he used to give her money and to drive her around all over the show. The new boyfriend, my cousin was financing the boozing of. He was a scrub that, however, had a car, and my cousin was always using a little receptionist salary to fund his ways. So when you go from being wined and dined to paying the way of a man, you're gonna miss your ex-boyfriend. And so my cousin missed her ex because of that, and she also missed him because he was just a better guy. You know when you're dumb? And my cousin found out that this guy was busy with another girl trying to love her, and she broke that relationship up because she knew how much this guy loved her. She broke it up. So this guy could have today married some other woman that would have respected him and taken him seriously. And this guy was humiliated, stopped hanging out with that friend of his because another dude took his woman. And so for those reasons, I mean, for crying out loud, you can't hang out with them anymore. So he broke off from the crew of guys, stopped hanging out with them, and just basically went on right ahead and tried to heal. And just as he was trying to heal, my cousin was like, hi, I miss you. She was like, hi, I miss you. For freaking crying out loud. Upon being on some nyang, I miss you, this guy melted because he always loved her so much. And so he dumped that woman that he was pursuing. And oh, another thing that she used to say was, whoa, girl, you dumped him. So when you're not busy getting bachelored, when a man is not the one buying your booze, but you're buying his, of course you're gonna miss the dude that was financing your ways. But if he goes and finances another woman, if he goes and buys another woman Debonairs pizza, girl, like proper, it's his woman, let him go and buy her pizza. Yako Debonairs with extra cheese. Let him go buy her Debonairs pizza with extra cheese and a Coca-Cola. Because you passed up on the Coca-Cola, the extra cheese, the feta, and the avocado. You passed it up. You passed up Bukbechelwa. You passed up gifts. You passed up the cupcakes. You passed up the being driven around everywhere. You passed up being picked up from work and dropped off. You passed it up. You passed up. And now when this guy was trying to do that for some other woman, she rocked up and basically was like, I miss you. I miss you. I miss you. I miss you. And this bugger Dumbo. So, I mean, really, when this woman becomes the bane of your existence later on, dude, you saw it. We were nile. And so you had it coming, frankly, when she now all of a sudden goes awry on a brother. We bonile, bruam. We bonile. Manje maso ukwatile, ujele matlapa, obatla kholo, tigging that you married. And try to make it look as if though you're the better guy. You were, but you see, that's the thing. My son. Proverbs 7, you were warned. You had all the signs. First, it was her being best friends with a practical prostitute. And secondly, it was the fact that she ditched you for your boy and you took her back and then you married her? You married her. I'm sorry. No. At the time, because she was my cousin and my girl, I low-key kept quiet about it, but I would always look at this guy on some, she does not deserve you. You should have just left. Like, I thought he was dumb. And because of this guy's... Because of how much my cousin hurt him, he changed. Because of how much my cousin hurt this guy, he changed. His personality, his character changed, and he went from being the doting, loving guy to essentially one of those moody dudes that you always have to be following around, and oh, you are always at his beck and call. And because my cousin had crushed him that way, she took his mood swings in her stride, but he wasn't always like that. He changed in a way that my ex-boyfriend and I were like, what bother this guy? Because of the fact that he's moody. He once tried to stop drinking, and when he was not drinking alcohol, he would be so miserable that he would be moody. So we preferred him drunk. Like, he never used to be that way. He never used to be that way. This man was changed for the worst by my cousin, and he still married her. He still married her. So, I mean, now it's a snare. Now, ofra. Now this woman is involved in so much darkness that his life and his own daughter's life is in danger. Now he is trapped with a Jezebel, and it is men like these that then later on want to go by your chat that women that make sense. This guy, my cousin's husband, I dreamt about him, and in this dream he was busy following my ecosystem around. He was busy hovering around wherever I was at with a whole bunch of other people because he didn't want the company of his wife. He didn't want the company of his wife, and I've had so many dreams before where he's busy following me around, not in a romantic capacity, not like trying to be with me, but trying to change my mind about him. On some, I might be married to your cousin, but I'm not the same as her. Mara, to me they are the same. Because this man was turned to darkness because of an evil woman. He turned to witchcraft at some point in his life out of desperation. And that witchcraft darkened him even further than what he was already being spiraled down. And now I can't stand witches and everything they do. And he wants to appeal to me, people like me, on some, look, I'm not the same as this chick. But you see, birds of a feather flock together, plus these women, their feet go down to death. So if you're gonna follow after this random female, understand that hell is where you're headed to. Men are given the same warnings. Another case in point is my ex-boyfriend. He was going to make out of me the kind of woman that is in a stray suit. So it's a good thing I got out. My ex-boyfriend was a good guy in the beginning, but he turned to the darkness, so he was going to put me in a stray suit. We're not going to a psychiatric hospital. We're not going bored. So the Lord broke us up. But the guy ended up with a Jezebel woman too. She had been all over the show. First and foremost, before my ex-boyfriend and I started dating, he was trying to get with this woman, and she rejected him because he didn't have anything. He was still struggling. And so she was like, you ain't got no money when I'm in need. And even though she liked him back, she passed him up. That was the first warning sign. You don't marry a woman that did not want you back when you were still Oshapaka 2 series. Back when you were still combaring a taxi. Back when, since an like carry from parents, allowance, because you don't have your own salary. Back when you were still answering the phone in a corporate South Africa, and that's your job. Back when you were still earning salary 12,000, and this chick is annoyed with the fact that you can't buy her Fascinator Yako Durban July that cost 4,000 rands. Yeah, back then, if a woman did not want you when you were in squalor, when you had nothing, guys, make like 50 cents and ask the chick 21 questions. And if she can't answer these 21 questions in a satisfactory fashion, you ain't got no business putting a ring on that. And my ex asked this chick 21 questions proverbially, and she was like, no. She wasn't like Megan Good in that 50 Cents music video, no. She wasn't busy on some, yes, I'll be with you. I'll visit you in Danyani. She was like, yo, you dare go to Danyani, Mina. Goodness gracious, yo, I'm going to go Mnyondi Zanje, like a dove. I'm a fly bugger. How's not it's okay. When a woman is pulling a kangimbao on you, you don't later when you make money, you idiot. Marry her. Like, the signs were always there. This chick passed up my ex, and if at all she had not passed him up, him and I would never have gotten together. Him and I would never have dated because he would have been with her. He was prepared to take her and her child, raise that kid as his own, all that jazz. But she was like, call center? You can't even afford to clothe me, goddammit, July. Became the bane of my existence in the relationship, because that's the thing about these women that pass up better guys. Just like my cousin, standing, like basically stripping, now husband, away from the woman that he was pursuing at the time that she went back to him. So too did this chick. When I was now accommodating the guy that she passed up, she then became the bane of my existence and was the tick in my hair. She kept on drinking the juice and the blood out of my follicles, and I was upset. Ultimately, my ex-boyfriend made a decision when I gave him an ultimatum, and he stuck with me because he asked me 21 questions, and like Megan Good in that 50 Cent music video, I was like, yes, I'll be there for you when you're in prison. And so because I was ride or die to a scrub that was sitting on the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me and successfully actually got me, because I was there for him through thick and thin. He basically told this gold digger, no, sorry, I'm not gonna let you break up a relationship with a woman that loved me from the call center. So he stuck around with me. We broke up, tried to bring back lost lover. When all that failed, things fell apart. A couple of years after him and I broke up, this chick all of a sudden, now that he was making money, was like, hey, how are you? I've always thought you're so beautiful. You're so hot. Yeah, I mean, come on. And you marry her? And you marry her? You asked her 21 questions, and all of them it was a buzzer. She failed, but you married her. Now that she was claiming that if you had no money, she would be there for you. and love you unconditionally. So now my ex is also ensnared to a woman that could not pass the 21 questions, who he married when he was at the height of his prosperity, and who had rejected him at the height of his failures, at the height of his poverty. She was nowhere to be found. At the height of his prosperity, she was all up in his grill. And now today my ex has cast so many spells to try and get back together with me, even got divorced, and the children or child that they have with that woman. He wanted me to take him, messing up there, and also breaking the living daylights out of my heart, nearly essentially putting me in a stray suit at a psychiatric hospital. He hurt me to a point where if I had not given my life to Jesus, I would have basically gone low-key crazy because of how crazy he was acting towards the end of the relationship. I rejected him because remember, I'm the Gaza Strip that never gets taken by Hamas. I was like, no, I'm in Christ now. I know who I am in him. I'm not going to, what do you call this thing? Compromise. I'm not going to settle. That same woman, not only the one that my ex married, not only did she reject him prior, but she was all over the show. She rejected my ex, but she had been with some of his friends. You cannot marry a woman that has been with any of your boys, especially if the guy didn't die. The first guy that she was with, what caused them to develop feelings for each other was because her boyfriend passed away, who was my ex's best friend. The guy died, so fine, we'll give you concession, but that was not the end of it. Other men that he knew, guys, like, how as a man do you lay with a woman that some of your boys have tasted? Like, there is just something that men can't deal with in that regard. And my ex was dumb enough to allow himself to go out like that. And now today it's his wife, it's his bride. I don't know how she's acting. I don't have details concerning that particular union, but I do know he has now got quite a great deal of regret, a violent amount of sorrow, and he wishes that he had not messed up with me. And last night I had a dream of him fantasizing about me being his wife. Dude, fantasizer, or you can just repent. Is that basic? But the dreams that I got, yes, like it, guys, there is so much spiritual manipulation. I will never settle. You see, I know about my ex, and I also know about my cousin's husband. These are men I know. So I would never ever accommodate some dude from the past that wants to come into my life. My cousin's husband is not trying to get with me, but he wishes that I had a different opinion of him. I can never have a different opinion of him. Why? Because he introduced my cousin to witchcraft, and so the menace that she is today will always be his fault. Like, he made his, and he can't have his bread buttered on both sides. You cannot have me view you as a much better human being when your wife is the bane of my existence. Frankly, both of you, as the pair that you are menaces to my particular society. But as for my ex-boyfriend, he wanted to come back. However, men like him, men like my cousin's husband and my ex, men like Samson, who mess up with Delilah, they, after making mistakes with these immoral women, have this like brazen, audacious disposition about themselves, where they now want to come into the lives of good girls in their middle age. When the Lord is talking to my son, when these people are still 18, 19, 17, 20, 21, God is whispering into your ear at marriable ages when you're still yet to make any mistakes, but you ignore him back then, and the results are fulfilled in Proverbs 7. The end result is the Proverbs 7 woman. So when you have been afflicted by my son, Proverbs 7 woman that you didn't listen to God concerning, let's get all bora, godly girls. Don't come and annoy better women than that and now try to marry them claiming to protect them when you're still busy with witchcraft from here to Timbuktu, when you're still ransacking these streets from here to Timbuktu, when you are still afflicting from here to Timbuktu, and then you innovate brand spanking new ways to sin because you're just desperate to reside in that Gaza Strip. You will mess it up like the Palestinians have messed it up. You will use your own civilians as human shields. You will burn greenhouses. You will torch everything that could have enabled you to have a tourist destination glory. But instead you made it a war zone. You made it a base camp for a military that is always just shooting bullets into a place that you are now salivating after because they went on right ahead and made their land green. They went on right ahead and made their land viable. I am like Jerusalem at this point, where I'm still viable. I'm still bringing forth olives. I am still bringing forth grapes. I am still wholesome. And I am salivated after, like I am longingly salivated after by people in the Gaza Strip. And now they're out here trying to break down my kibbutz. They are out here trying to like shoot some people dead, cut some babies in half because they feel entitled to the land. Nah, you can't be entitled to a land that you rejected at first. You knew what good girls you were supposed to be with as a good guy. You knew what women were not going to veer you off into darkness. You knew the Lord warned you to love the Lord, and so therefore find a good thing in a wife when he leads you. The Lord gave you everything you needed. Even before you knew him, he was whispering to you. by his invisible qualities and your conscience, and you ignored him. So do not expect a Christian woman to compromise and settle for you because she's now almost 40. I'm not doing it. Do you understand? And there is no amount of harlotrous witchcraft that you can throw in my direction that will ever change my mind. I want to read you Proverbs 7 so you can understand what happens to these randos who settle for bad girls. And today they are the judgment. Now they are the curse. These women are the curse. And now that you have been cursed by a Jezebel or a Delilah, don't come and trap on me with witchcraft until Mina I'm married to a dude that is like, whew, at least finally I ended up lucky. Nah, you don't get to be lucky with a Christian. You are lucky with a good girl from the world. Good girl, really in inverted commas. They're the ones that settle for deadbeats. Like the one of the friends of my ex who used to cheat on his colored girlfriend that I told you about earlier. Or who is this, that other woman from the psychiatric hospital who was put in there by a bad man, but she was a good girl. Yeah, that's what women in the world can settle for. You can end up lucky with a good girl from the world as an evil man. One of my friends, out of the crew of friends and girls that used to hang out together, I had no respect for his ways with women, but he was one of our boys. This guy was all over the show. And by the time he married a good girl. I'm pretty sure today he is the bane of her existence, if at all they're still married. He was a horrible guy that one day brought home some sweet konyana, and I was like, uzolimala. When I went on Facebook and realized after years had progressed, when I was now in sorrow, that they had tied the knot, I was like, umunyetsi. I thought it was gonna be fast like all the other girls that he brings and leaves. Yeah, women in the world end up allowing themselves to marry guys that were displaying evil because they hope marriage will change them. But if you're in Christ, you reject a guy that had, like, just yesterday was sleeping with a prostitute, and then today he meets you in the office on training. Yes, like it. And then he's trying to holler at you. The Lord uzom kippa fast and furious. And when the Lord kippas him, that's when they try to use witchcraft. They try all different kinds of things, and they will work like waiting to tooth and nail to land you in their backyard, even though, like I said, just yesterday they were fornicating. Just yesterday they were masturbating. Just this morning they were watching pornography before they came to work. And then he wants to go and marry a godly girl. This guy from American Alijwalo, he was into porn. He had had sex just recently. He was into sleeping with prostitutes, and he called himself a Christian. And then he happened upon a Christian woman, and then imagine that he just wipe the snot from his nose a little bit, just wipe the grease on his face, just plump his cheeks a little bit by slapping his face so he can look a little fresher. And then was like, hi, how you doing? I'm this. Yeah, I listened to him for all of 5 seconds until God bombed him out the way. He wanted Gaza, and God was like, no. God was like, no. Why? Because I have embraced him, Messiah. So let's read Proverbs 7 to you, that you might gain, what do you call this thing? Perspective, okay? As to what happens to men who roll around with these freaky little girls. My son, keep my words and treasure up my commandments with you. This is Proverbs 7. Keep my commandments and live. Keep my teachings as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers, write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call insight your intimate friend, to keep you from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words. For at the window of my house I have looked out through my lattice, and I have seen among the simple, I have perceived among the youths, a young man lacking sense. A young man lacking sense, passing along the street near her corner, taking the road to her house. In the twilight, in the evening, and at the time of night and darkness. And behold, the woman meets him, dressed as a prostitute, wily of heart. She is loud and wayward. Her feet do not stay at home. Now in the street, now in the market, and at every corner she lies in wait. She seizes him and kisses him, and with bold face says to him, I had to offer sacrifices, and today I have paid my vows. So now I have come out to meet you, to seek you eagerly, and I have found you. I have spread my couch with coverings, colored linens from Egyptian linen. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love till morning. Let us delight ourselves with love. For my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He took a bag of money with him. At full noon he will come home. With much seductive speech she persuades him. With her smooth talk she compels him. All at once he follows her, as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a stag is caught fast till an arrow pierces its liver. As a bird rushes into a snare, he does not know that it will cost him his life. And now, O sons, listen to me, and be attentive to the words of my mouth. Let not your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths, for many a victim has she laid low, and all her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is the way to Sheol, going down to the chambers of death. That is what the Lord has to say about immoral women. And men are warned perpetually about this chick who also eats honey and says, I've done nothing. Uyabodla lo muntu. My cousin has cheated on this husband guy and basically afflicted him in some permanent way. My ex-boyfriend angazi ukuthi kwenzakalani ngaye with this woman that he's with. But he is in so much severe regret about entering into that now sekafuna ukuza la azongibhora mina. That's what's good. Yeah, I keep getting dreams where I'm laying in bed with that guy, having accepted him, having embraced what he was. Like, I tried to bashing his head on some why did I mess up with Karabo? Dude, you had everything. You had everything you needed in order to live a life in godliness, Papa. You needed, like, you had everything. My ex-boyfriend, he was given everything with me. Like, Papa, what kind of a woman rides out a dude or staracha like that? Like, trying to make a better man out of him. That's what I did. Hanging on the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. And I thoroughly took him, and I raised him up to be a better man than that, a bigger man than that. When he started to make money, he started to disrespect me. He broke my heart until I cried out to God and I got healed. It's a long story. And now today he wishes you could come back. I'm trying to explain, Uguti. You have always known men. What made sense for you from very young. It's not like you are only wisening up now that you're older, or that you're only getting counsel now that you're older. It's that now that you're older, you've made so many mistakes. Listen, where it is that you have basically set up camp. You have destroyed so much that now you want to all of a sudden start again from scratch with women that have not had you coming. Like when you're such a disaster that nobody has you coming, yeah, that's what you are in the lives of good girls. I am not going to be a byword as like Gaza is. A land that is about to be laid destitute because it was given over to a people that was salivating after it even though it didn't belong to them. By capitulating your Gaza, you organize a future attack on the kibbutz. You organize inadvertently and indirectly an attack on your persons. Because when you settle against in what it is that the Lord told you don't you dare, you inevitably find yourself in a position where you are severely compromised. I had a dream where my cousin's now husband and a whole bunch of men, different races, do you understand, of men, were robbing an art gallery. Like they were robbing, it was like a flea market, do you understand, where they were selling art. And this white dude rocked up with a band of miscreants of different races, but he looked like he was the head, what do you call this, head gang member. And they were scary, and they were shooting anybody that stood in their way dead. And everybody was very scared of them. And they rocked up at this flea market and stole some very high-priced art items. Very high-priced art items. High value, like almost like stealing a Van Gogh or a Mona Lisa. They stole these art items and then left with the gang. The gang that rocked up ended up in this room of mine, this small little tiny room of mine, and they were scanning it for high-priced artwork to steal. And the main character here, this main gang leader white guy, hovered his gun around my face, and I was scared that he was gonna shoot because he was violent and they had shot other people and killed them. But he looked at me, and I was knelt down, basically just waiting for him to shoot and just get this over with. And he hovered his gun, however he was like, nah, and then he didn't shoot. He left me alone, and then they disappeared. Inside this mukuku of mine, it was not just me, but it was also my cousin's ex-husband. Not ex, current husband. My cousin's husband was in this room, having fled from the flea market where these thieves were stealing, and other people in my family, alongside other people I don't recognize, but they were all squeezed in this little room. They had run in here, and because of running in here, they found solace. They found safety from the gangster guy. And the reason why the gangster guy and his band of miscreants did not feel it necessary to steal from in here, nor shoot anybody, was because they underestimated everything that was in here. It was so lowly. There was so much poverty that they were like, ah, let's go. There's nothing worthwhile here to take. And they left. However, my cousin's husband had pocketed, capitalizing on the calamity. So he was capitalizing on the fact that outside at the flea market, there was a robbery. He realized that everything is falling apart so quickly before the gang member would notice him doing this. He quickly stole a very expensive art piece himself before anybody would see it because of the calamity. And he pulled it out of his pocket on some, look at what I got for free. Look at what I got for free. And I just look at him in my dream on some, you're no different then from that guy that stole from the flea market, killing some people who were standing in his way. And when I said that to him, he looked at me on some, stop being so judgmental, Karabo. You know, I mean, come on. It's not like I was going to steal. It's just that I capitalized on the chaos. Yo, wait again. The dream then proceeded where it is that we're in this little tiny room and we think we're just ourselves. It's quiet. We are keeping it a secret because we don't want anybody arrested. Only to find out that outside at the flea market, where there was, what do you call this thing? Where there was a robbery, they had punched a hole into this mukuku of mine and put cameras in it. And so basically caught the confession of my cousin's husband, confessing to having stolen artwork. And it was only a matter of time in this dream before the police would come and arrest him. And I remember feeling so bad for him at the end of the dream, but for me it was like, it is what it is. Your day has arrived. They're now also going to arrest you. Why I was being spied on in my room by the outside world, I don't even know. What in the world under heaven did that dream mean? It's pretty self-explanatory. God is showing me men, in particular it was a gang of men of different races stealing artwork. It's the very thing that I'm talking about right now. There are men trying to steal, they're trying to steal good women, and they want them because of the fact that they're so high value. That is the very precise reason why they are interested in God's daughters. And that gangster had prospered. Let me not say God's daughters, let me just say good girls. That guy had prospered to steal quite some pretty prolific art pieces, and he escaped with them. But he came into my shack, which was lowly, and because of how lowly this shack was, he hovered around my face wanting to shoot, but then was like, whatever, there's nothing of value here, and left. Essentially, God is showing me that I've been protected because of my poverty. Every other Christian woman that has allowed themselves to marry an unbeliever, and every other good girl that's allowed themselves to marry some prolific nasty, it's all they were put in. They were supposed to exercise self-control, and they didn't. They were supposed to exercise wisdom, and they didn't. They knew that they were entering into a nasty situation, and they did not flee from it. And that my poverty, even though I can't stand it, has protected me from making the same mistake that many Christian women have already made. I personally almost settled for some animal in the US. But even before I lost everything, there was another animal that was busy pursuing me that I was seriously considering. There's a guy that ended up married to another woman that I thought was my husband that was a whole devil worshipper. God is showing me that, Garabo, stop looking at your life and your conditions and your circumstance with all that sorrow in your soul and imagine I've forsaken you. I can never forsake you. You're my disciple. I love you. I put you in this hole to protect you. And I had a job that I wanted you to do in exposing this rubbish. And the only way that you were going to be safe and not insist on in and of yourself marrying a guy that you suspected was, but you settled anyway, the only way to make sure that you didn't do that was by putting you in poverty. Your squalor would make them underestimate you and pass you up, rather. Like the guy who married another woman literally passed me up only because I lost a job. So I might have ended up his wife, but he was a devil worshipper. I loved him so much that there was no way under heaven that I would have ever rejected his proposal, and I would have settled for a lot of stuff, and I would have swept. A lot of observations are made under the rug. Get married to him just to accommodate him. So it turns out I've been protected by my poverty. And remember the glass, the surveillance that was watching the activity in this shack from outside? That was God showing me the prophetic gifting that he would give me, where people would attempt to steal valuable artworks and I would dream about it. So this guy basically made a confession of what he stole in an environment where he imagined nobody saw him, but there was surveillance on the outside of which would have been the equivalent of heaven. Uyabonwa. and it was only a matter of time before you would get arrested. So my cousin's is in trouble. He's trying to look like a good guy, but he can't. Why? Because, I mean, goodness, his wife, I'm keeper first and foremost. And secondly, he's not a good guy. He's into witchcraft, but he's been stealing. And in my dream, he stole that artwork because there was already calamity. There was already theft happening. There was already a robbery happening. So he quickly slipped a piece of art into his pocket. So essentially, he would never have committed the infractions that he committed if this level of chaos around in the ecosystem was not going on. If all this other theft was not happening. If so much witchcraft was not happening everywhere else around. So basically, there are people who are inspired to do witchcraft and steal what doesn't belong to them only because so many other witches are getting away with murder. So only because so many other witches are casting spells. They are allowing themselves to fall into sorcery because it appears so much sorcery is already happening. So what's it gonna hurt me to steal something using witchcraft when so many other people are doing it? At least I don't have a gun. At least I'm not killing. At least I am just basically capitalizing on the fact that the bank was already under siege. So let me steal a pen. Let me steal a chair. Let me steal a book. Let me steal gold in this bank. When the robbers are busy stealing, distracted is everybody focusing on the robbers. And so I'm gonna go on right ahead and get out with 20,000 rands worth of gold because, I mean, they were distracted. So there are people literally dabbling with witchcraft only because there's already so much witchcraft being dabbled with. They're casting spells just because so many other spells are being cast. They are partaking in the occult, and in so doing, what are they doing? They're causing the earth to be haunted. This guy, there was surveillance in the room that caught him confessing, and it was only a matter of time before he got arrested. So those of you who dabble with witchcraft and mess with people's lives because you realize there are bigger, more prolific Satanists out there than you, there is surveillance all over the show. And get that surveillance. I had another dream. Allow me to explain that in my final part. I don't like having so many parts, but I have to explain so that this whole thing I can piece it together. Let's move to the next part. This next part basically is going to finalize your understanding why I am so vehement on my stand, why I am making such war, why I will inevitably win, however, why it is important to be sober and recognize this war for what it is. These people are at the end of themselves, but they are also very entitled. They don't believe in God, however, they are noticing the power of God's servants. And because of noticing the power of God's servants, they now want to steal Askankane, just as Hamas stole, but as God's daughters and sons, I guess, we've got a prerogative or an incentive to protect even Gaza from being taken, even if people feel like we are snooty, like we are holding on to stuff that doesn't belong to us, like we are arrogant. Whatever they say, let them say it, because at the end of the day, God will make our heads stiff like hard like brass, so as to basically combat and successfully so those who are trying to steal our inheritance. You gotta hold fast. Last part.